So let's talk about just before the interview. What's happening just before the interview? What's your job? Now, I realize that many of you you're the interviewer and the camera guy, and that's all in one. So you have to, adjust the way that you do it based on that. But let's say you're just the interviewer, like me. My job is different than the crew. It's not to carry in lights or to set up a shot or to do any of that. My job is comfortability. I have a responsibility to the team. Okay, I'm not being lazy. My responsibility to the team is to get a really good interview. And so when I arrive on set, I'm hanging out with my lead. I'm talking to Lee. We're having a conversation about what's going on. I am the host of the party. Okay, so let's say you are having a party, and it's at your house, and people are coming over, and you open the door, and you're going to make them feel comfortable, right? Hey. At the party, you're just like, we got drinks over there and we got food over there and so-and-so's here, hang out, you want to put your coat up, that sort of thing. I'm making people feel comfortable. That's the same thing that you're doing here. I'm the host of the party. I am hosting Lee. I'm hanging out on the couch, talking to Lee, spending time with him, okay? We are talking about really nothing. I'm not talking about the story. This is extremely important. We're not talking about his story. We're not going over the beats of it. I'm not saying, I liked it when you said this the other day, and so we'll talk about that. We're not talking about that at all. If there's any chance that he's going to be emotional on camera, I don't want to kill that beforehand by, drumming up those feelings. And so if he was to, start crying before we do the interview, there's a very good chance we're going to miss that opportunity of connection in the interview. So I am talking to him about what his kids are doing. His kids play ball. One of his kids plays music. We're talking about that. He's moving right now. So I just bought a house. So I'm talking to him about why did you guys decide to move, and where are you living, and how's that going, and how did you decide to move? We used the pod, those sort of things. We're not talking about things that seemingly in that moment are very important, but the goal is this feeling and the way that he feels in this moment. And I just want him to feel calm. I want him to know that Adam's got it under control. I feel good. And I want him to be in a place where when we're doing the interview, he feels that as well. It is going to feel sometimes like you are not pulling your weight, like you're not bringing in stuff for the set, and like you're not carrying stuff, and the other guys are bringing it all in. But you have to realize that this is vitally important. What did we say? If the editor doesn't have what he needs, it's on you. And one of the ways he gets what he needs is this way. All right. So that's what's happening before the interview. Then, once we sit down, all right, Lee sits down in his chair, I sit across from him, I am in control. That makes him comfortable. And so I've got kind of a list that I've just come up with over the last few years of things that I tell people before we start rolling, all right? I'll say, hey, Lee, you might know some of this stuff, but if you don't, let me go over a couple of little details. Number one, we're just having a conversation. You don't have to look at the camera. It's just conversation between you and I, all right? If you accidentally look at the camera, that's not gonna blow a take or anything. That's fine. You don't have to say, cut, I'm sorry, let's start over. Just keep going, all right? We're gonna have a conversation. This video that we're making, it's gonna be about 4.5 minutes or so. We're gonna talk for well over an hour. So know this, if you feel like you mess up talking, just start over. It's not film, it doesn't cost us anything. So, you don't have to say cut, just say, I want to say it again. And if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see that he does it. He'll say, oh, you know what, I want to take that again. And he'll just keep rolling. He did that because he got permission from me from the beginning to be able to do that. That's how comfortable he was on set. I'll say, Lee, I'm not on camera. So when I ask you a question, talk as long as you want. I'm not going to talk over you. It's not a conversation in that regard, because if I talk over you, then we're going to blow the take. All right. So you talk as long as you want. When you're done, I'll give it a quick pause and I'll jump back into it. So if you watch the footage, you're not going to see me interrupt him very much. There was a couple of times where I could see, like, you know what, I want him to head in this direction, that I kind of interrupted him, like right when he stopped talking, and I sent him in that direction. But for the most part, I'm not talking to him. Another reason that it's important to communicate that I'm not on camera is he's got to rephrase the question in his answer. And so you'll see that in the footage. If I say, how much do you love your wife? And he's just like, I love her so much. Well, I don't know who her is. So somewhere in there, he's got to communicate my wife or Shannon or something like that. Inevitably, people are going to forget this, and that's fine. And when they do, just correct them. That's your job. Make sure you do that, because there's been plenty of times I've forgotten to do that. And then we get into the edit suite and it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know who he's talking about here. And I'm like, shoot, that's on me. And we had to figure out a way around it. So make sure that he understands he's got to rephrase the question a little bit in his answer. And then I'll let him know that we're going to have the interview. And then there's going to be a time at the end where we stop. And then Gary and I, in this case, or somebody else, maybe Chris and I, if it's a different shoot, we will go into the other room and we'll talk about the story. Gary's another set of ears, so he'll say, I feel like this part is confusing, or I don't understand this part, or I think it'd be good if we kind of condense this part. And I'll say, yeah, I wrote a couple of notes down, so I think that we could get this again. And we'll come back and we'll do about a 15-minute interview at the end. That's all in the footage. And one thing that happened in Lee's story that's a little different is typically I walk into another room of the house and have this conversation, just kind of more privately. Lee walked in when we were talking about it, and so he was part of the conversation. Now, Lee's become my friend, and he's really close to Gary, who's on set, so he was fine with being a part of it. And honestly, if I just said, I don't feel like Lee is saying this part very well. Lee's personality, he is in a place where he's confident enough, he would have been fine with that. That's going to be a judgment call for you. There are plenty of leads that I've worked with that if I said, I don't like the way that they're saying this, that would not have been good. That would have made the person really tense. And so you make that decision. Go in the other room, include the person if you want. That's on you. You've got to make that decision based on how comfortable that person would be with the information that they're given. I told Lee, hey Lee, I've got my notebook here and it's got my questions in it. I'm going to use these questions as a guide, and you'll see me write little things down, check off the questions so I know that I already covered that. I'll flip it over to another page and write a note about something. If that happens, or when that happens, keep looking at me and know that it's not that I'm disinterested. If you watch the behind the scenes footage, you'll see I've got my phone right there and I'm checking it regularly, and I'm checking the time. I'm making sure that I'm moving forward, because I don't want to be... This interview doesn't need to take 3 hours. And so just checking the time regularly helps me kind of stay on track. And so that's important that you communicate that at the beginning, because it might make him self-conscious if he thinks Adam's bored or Adam's texting, which you shouldn't be doing that, by the way, if you're not doing your job. So communicating all that information is, again, you're taking charge, you're making him comfortable and letting him know that you are in control. Last thing, and this is beautiful and helpful. I pray, all right? I pray on most shoots, really, even if it isn't like a church thing. I pray. I dedicate the time to God. We're celebrating what God has done in Lee's life. It's huge. It's big. Only God could do this. Only God has the power to forgive someone in the way that Lee's been forgiven. Only God has the power to rescue his marriage and put Lee in a position where he is fulfilled and has peace. God deserves our worship during this time and our dedication. So we take that moment to pray. Thank God for this opportunity. We do that as members of the local church, as people who serve Christ. I also do that to let Lee know this is important. And Lee does know that, but with everyone, this is important. What we're doing here is not flippant. This is a big deal. We're doing our part in the natural, but God's doing his part supernaturally, the things that only he can do through this. He's guiding my questions, and he's helping me remember things that I might forget. He's reminding Lee of things that he wants to say. So we dedicate that time to God. We worship God in that moment, and we say amen. And guess what? We're rolling, okay? So that's the helpful part. There's no action. I don't want to bring in a slate and be like, click and action. That's going to bring tension. All of a sudden, Lee's going to do this, and he's just going to be like, he's not going to communicate very well. You've already got that going against you, all right? Regularly, people are fine, and then they get behind the camera, and they see this lens, and they're just like, the way they start communicating is just like, oh, this isn't gonna work very well. So I'm trying to alleviate those things. So praying celebrates and worships God, celebrates what God has done, and gives honor to Him, gives honor to the moment, and then gives us an opportunity to secretly say roll and get your interview started.